welcome. This is Project Evan for Part 6 of Last Train Home, developed by Ashbourne Games and published by THQ Nordic. We recently finished our successful raid against the Red Army encampment, and now there is no concentrated enemy opposition between us and Penza. So we are going to spend this episode gathering resources, leveling up our troops, and preparing for reaching the city, gathering more food, gathering more fuel. Since the beginning of the Red Army camp mission and the end of last episode, we gained a huge amount of fuel. We're actually in a very healthy position when it comes to fuel and resources. So that is not a pressing concern anymore. We were down to, I believe, something ridiculous like 3 to 6 fuel before we helped that village a couple episodes ago. And we were back down to our critical level yet again prior to the Red Army camp mission. I believe we only had 17 fuel left. But now we are at 277 if I'm looking at the... Yeah, well over 200. So that allows us to consolidate and concentrate on helping our legionnaires to thrive rather than simply survive. And it also allows us to concentrate and come up with a plan as we get closer and closer to the city of Penza. By the way, I am once again recording gameplay footage and then commentating over that footage, rather than giving live commentary as I play the game. I didn't get any comments on the last video, at least not yet. The video's only been up for a day, I believe, part 5. But I do have some friends who watch these videos, and so they gave me some feedback, and the new format was very well received, and I personally liked it a lot more. I think the audio sounds quite a lot cleaner. Still not perfect, but just much cleaner, more professional, less hissing, less garbling. And the episodes also end up being a lot shorter, which means that people are able to see more of the video itself by percentage. Video tends to be more engaging, cut out more dead time, because even though the minute-to-minute gameplay loop is quite interesting, I don't find it particularly interesting to watch after you've seen certain things multiple times. So, for instance, when you look through an abandoned settlement, the same flavor text tends to appear. When you go through a lumberyard, a lake, the same sort of dialogue tends to appear, only really changing according to whether or not you acquire resources and which members of your squad have certain traits. So even though that's a part of the game that I personally find very engaging and very enjoyable, it's not very interesting to watch. It's the missions and the upgrades that are interesting to watch. So I am going to keep going with the new format until I get a larger sampling of feedback. And even then, I don't think we'll fully switch back to the live commentary, at least not until I get a better microphone situation where I can record commentary live without the computer fans whirring in the background and causing issues. So we're currently about to stop in the station of Morhansk, I think it's called, or Morshansk. And this will allow us to change the composition of our train, which is not going to happen until we get some additional cars and additional car upgrades. But as you can see, frustratingly, right before I reach the station, I realize that my storage space is maxed out. And so we end up needing to discard a disappointing amount of rifle ammunition. And, or actually, I believe I do try to spread out the resources that I discard, but it ends up being just a frustrating amount that we need to leave behind until we can upgrade our storage car, which I did not do this episode. But what can you do? Yeah, I'm trying to look at resources that we don't expect to use in the near future. Yeah, I was just so frustrated by that at the time because we were less than a kilometer, I believe, away from Morshansk, where we could have sold stuff. So we use the merchant, and I primarily decide to buy fuel and just sell miscellaneous goods. My main priority at this point, because we aren't starved for resources, my main priority at the moment is to actually acquire money. Because as I believe I said a couple episodes ago, fuel is the only resource that we are guaranteed to use, apart from ammunition. If we are high in, say, grenades, but low in medical supplies, and we have wounded men, those extra grenades are useless to me. I would much rather have med kits. So, given the situation we find ourselves in, where we need to purchase resources as needs arise in a potentially openly hostile territory, I would much rather have a lot of money and low everything else, because then we can spend money according to our needs, rather than having great excess of resources and no money, because if we have a great excess of resources, we might have a surplus in some areas and a deficit in others. And once again, I decide to forego purchasing alcoholic beverages for my men at the pub, because, oh man, inflation has just done something awful to beer or vodka or whatever it is that is being sold at this pub. Because 990 rubles for, what was it, 10 beers? That's ridiculous. No thank you. So I think here I'm actually going to do a cut, because I have soldiers who I can assign skill points to, and it's going to be quite a while before we reach a destination where something interesting happens. So I'm actually going to do a cut, and then I will see you all when something noteworthy occurs. Alright, a couple interesting things are happening. First, our usual scouting team, Alfred, Klaus, Magdalena, we explored an abandoned settlement. We got quite a decent amount of money and some other resources at Lshinka, and I'm sending my second squad, which I believe has Antonin in it, who is our avaricious character, the person who gives us bonuses while trading. We are sending him to Nizhitsy Lomov, where there is a gunsmith, where I'm hoping to find some potential upgrades for our weapons. And I am very pleased to find a parabellum pistol. This game's interpretation of the Luger. which fires 9mm parabellum ammunition, and which is why in the game it's called the parabellum pistol. And I was very surprised to see that the parabellum pistol does not really have a higher magazine size than the Nagant, but it does so much more damage. It does, I think, nearly double the damage at 40, as well as having a somewhat higher fire rate. So I actually decide to sell all of my Nagant revolvers and simply trade them back for the pistols, because chances are we won't be deploying more than 2 medics at a time in a mission. That's highly unlikely, and it's much more effective for both our medics to have a consistent and effective means of defending themselves than to simply have a ton of weapons that we can outfit to a ton of medics. And what that allows me to do is sell our revolvers, as well as a couple other miscellaneous resources, whilst also buying the pistols, as well as the carabiner short rifle for a grenadier. And we can do all of that and still really not pay any significant amount of money, less than 600. Yeah, the carabiner short rifle is also a significant upgrade to the M1903. I believe it has higher precision as well. Though I end up buying the carabiner short rifle because the M1903 is good enough, and by not purchasing the carabiner, we actually got money from that exchange. We gained back an additional 300 rubles. So I start up the train again. I really love the sound of the train starting in this game. It's just very grounded and visceral. It's a good sound effect. The smoke particle effects are also very well done for the train's funnel. So that was the most significant thing that happened on this part of the road. And we got some more resources and combat roll XP from that abandoned settlement. So I'm going to do another cut, and we will meet again, probably just outside of Penza. Alright, we have arrived in the city of Penza. Our train is just pulled into the station. So let's do this. No turning back, so this is an end of chapter mission. 2 threat skulls. Let's do this! You arrive in Penza, the first major city after Moscow. It seems that civil unrest has occurred here, too. You notice red flags fluttering high above a number of buildings. Your advisor approaches. We had hoped to get through Penza without encountering any conflict, Major. But you can see from the abundance of flags, the city has sided with the Reds. The provisional government is attempting to negotiate safe passage with the Red Army, but these talks do not seem to be going well. Despite this, we must navigate our way through Penza in order to continue our journey to Vladivostok. Confrontation is inevitable. Our mission is to secure the station and surrounding area. Alright, I skipped forward just a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 in-game hours in order for a couple of our soldiers to regain some stamina, but I am just now finishing assembling our squad to move into the town, and I have our usual suspects, our 2 scouts, Maximilian and Alfred, and then our 3rd scout, whose name escapes me at the moment, but I remember him doing well this mission. So we'll take note of his name at the end or at some point during the mission. We have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, I believe, is it 3? Is it 3 or 4 riflemen? Okay, we only bring 3 riflemen. 2 medics with our new Luger Parabellum pistols. Antonin, our light machine gunner, and Dusan, our grenadier. Pretty much everyone deploying is at least level 2, with the exception of our 3rd scout and our 2nd medic. But I'm going into this mission feeling quite confident. We have beaten worse odds with fewer troops, namely when we had to escape Moscow. So I am going into this mission with a high degree of optimism.
Kdybychom je slušně požádali, dovolili by nám v tom depu udělat nějaké opravy a vylepšení?
Ha! Skús ich presvedčiť svojim kúzlom osobnosti.
Tak dost. Rudí nás s vlakem nenechají ani projet. Musíme to nádraží obsadit. Takže se radši začneme soustředit na vyčištění nádražních oblastí.
Alright, so our mission is to secure the train station.
Podívám se, co tam je. Pane, podívám se. Jakoby se stalo. Podívám se.
Now, some of you may be wondering, why go in guns blazing?
Tady se to rudými jen hemží. Asi by bylo dobré
and this is where the game introduces tall grass.
Keď sa schováme v kroví a vo vysokej tráve, neuvidia nás. A keď sa budeme pohybovať veľmi pomaly, nebudú nás počuť. Schovajte sa, počkajte, až k vám prídu, potom ich prekvapte zozadu a zlikvidujte ich. Pekne čisto.
Hlavně nikdo nesmí omylem vystřelit. Střelba není zrovna nenápadná.
So our advisors there, our senior officers, were just telling us that we can move unseen through tall grass. And it advises us to get stealth kills and remain hidden for as long as possible before
Odpočívaj v pokoji, súdruh.
Draw attention from the enemy. Now, as I was saying prior, some of you may be wondering, why are we going in guns blazing if we know that the infant Czech government is attempting to negotiate for our safe passage? Well, here's the thing, we know that, but the Czech government, even though they mean well, have really not left us with any sustainable option. They have told us to remain neutral and to avoid hostilities in a country that is openly hostile to us. We have now been shot at on sight at least 2 or 3 times by the Red Army without any kind of discretion or due process. And in the case of Moscow,
Jestli na něj zazvoní, budeme se topit v rudých dřív, než stihneš říct sláva Sovětům.
Ha, len nech si prídu.
Už
ma nebaví zakrádať sa v kroví. Začína ma svrbieť chrbát.
Tak si vykasej kalhoty a pojď ten zvon vypnout. Hezky tiše.
What was I saying? Yeah, so in the case of General Morozov, we didn't even do anything. We were intending on just making our way out and not getting involved in the Civil War whatsoever. And General Morozov just blatantly gave us an ultimatum that he knew that we were not able to fulfill. And on our ability, due to our inability to fulfill an unfulfillable ultimatum, he just summarily executed our Major Gedezdik. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Major Gedezdik. So I really, even if I were given the option to attempt to negotiate with the Soviets, I would not see that as an option anymore. So, frankly, it is as merciful and diplomatically sensible as we could possibly be right now to attempt to essentially sneak through the city. Now, whether or not we will sneak through the city remains yet to be seen. But I'm just moving up the rest of my men from the train yard,
Pane?
moving them through this gap in the fence into hard cover and tall grass. Our two senior scouts, Maximilian Drap and Alfred, I forget if his name is Klaus or Klaus. But they now are level 3, and they have both gained a passive ability called camouflage, which essentially means that if they stand still for more than a couple of seconds, they become unspotable, which is going to be amazing when it comes to setting up ambushes, especially due to the new actives that I have given them. I've given both Maximilian and Alfred the critical shot ability, which allows them to get a guaranteed one-hit kill against most basic infantry, which is also going to be huge in terms of setting up ambushes and letting us initiate combat on our terms in a favorable position.
Můžete se spolehnout.
It's Alfred Kraus, yes. So I was wrong on both counts, actually. It's not Kaus or Klaus, it's Kraus.
Ano, pane.
Nepřítel!
Well, in any case, I'm moving up Alfred Kraus. And stupidly, I left him off silent mode because I wanted to target that explosive barrel.
Vidím nepřítele.
Which has now, of course, drawn the aggression of that fire team. I do get the explosion off on the barrel, but it's just not to my satisfaction. However, we did disable the alarms, so fortunately, it's just in this fire team that we have engaged.
Připraven, pane.
Ano?
Čekám na rozkazy. Jdu do krytu.
Though I admit, this is not the best way to start the mission, because I believe less than 5 minutes in, we already have both of our scouts injured. Yeah, because I also did not position Maximilian very well either. So now I'm just sending my rifleman, one of my scouts, and my grenadier to flank behind hard cover, which was ultimately unnecessary. And then I have one of my riflemen dueling a pair of soldiers near the western side of the train yard.
Je to jen škrábnutí. Ano?
So here I'm just scrambling to have my medics administer care to our two wounded scouts.
Počúvam. Vaše rozkazy?
And with our third scout, I then move him to flank.
Pripravený. Zameriavam.
And he gets a great flanking shot against the enemy, but I move him back just because I don't want him to be caught out in the open. Consistently, I have found in Last Train Home, the main way to win or lose any engagement is by deciding who has to traverse open ground through gunfire. Pretty much any time I have taken significant damage is because I have had to traverse a soldier or a group of soldiers across open ground while under fire. And every single time we have succeeded in combat against the Red Army thus far in the game. It has been through competent positioning and forcing the enemy to maneuver through open ground while we are firing at them. So hopefully we can continue to leverage the odds of combat in our favor in that manner.
Vidím nepřítele.
Podívám se, co tam je. Postarám se o to, pane. Ano, pane.
And once again, we are just seeing the power of the scout made manifest. Yeah. Fantastic stuff.
Podívám se.
I have yet to see anyone disagree with me regarding my claim that the scout
Ano,
is probably
pane.
the single best combat role in the game. Not because he just has superior stats and firepower, but because he does good damage with a high precision weapon, and being able to secure a line of sight in a huge radius with a generous range, that is just so useful for getting, as I mentioned before, that all-important entrenchment so that you can force the enemy to come to you through gunfire. That is what adjudicates you the victory, and it's the scout that more often than not guarantees you can be in that position. So now the Reds in the city have gotten an inkling of the fact that maybe because there was a bunch of gunfire from the train yard, and because there is now no one communicating from this train station, that there might be something suspicious going on. So they eventually start trickling in across the train yard, and it just does not go well for them. You guys heard that gun cocking and loud gunshot noise? That decisively loud gunshot noise earlier, I was talking over it. But that
Nechce se mi věřit, že se vám to
our
opravdu
critical shot
povedlo.
skill.
Ale ještě to nekončí. Musíte ty Rudé vyhnat. Avšak než se pokusíme o velký útok, bude třeba narušit jim hlídku a zásobovací linie.
Alright, so Captain Longer there, he just advised us to disrupt the enemy patrol pattern
Poslouchám, pane.
so that we can continue to make our way through the city and essentially plunder any additional supplies before we need to leave. So yeah, twice now I have used the Scout's critical shot skill, and it has been extremely useful both in conserving ammunition and decisively ending a fight.
Podívám se, co tam je. Vidím nepřítele. Jdu do krytu.
And so we see a person here who has a dialogue prompt, so he wants to talk to us. I'm assuming that this will shed light on...
Legionáři, tady! Několik vašich kolegů nedaleko drží v zajetí. Jestli jim chcete pomoct, měli byste si pospíšit.
Přestože bychom se měli snažit tady nikoho nenechat, musíme vás vyzvat k opatrnosti. Rudí nás budou očekávat. Pokus o záchranu bude riskantní.
So that civilian there just tipped us off to the fact that some of our Legionnaire friends are being held prisoner. And even though Captain Longer has strongly advised caution on our part, I still want to follow his mantra of leaving no one behind. We'll see how that pans out. But chances are these Czech Legionnaire prisoners are being held in a secure area, surrounded by enemies, so we will need to be on the lookout for that.
Já se o to postarám.
Currently, I'm moving up Bedrich to get a stealth kill on the sentry who is patrolling the this park here with the fountain. Something that I find to be a cool detail, even though it may not be noticed or taken for granted by some, the fountain has no running water, which I find to be a win-win because it means that the developers didn't need to animate the fountain, and it also reflects the desperate situation of the Russian Civil War, where even in areas that are held by one force or another, like Penza is most certainly held by the Red Army. There is no White Army or Green Army presence here. And yet, basic services and utilities are in very, very short supply. I believe that the game takes place in mid to late 1918, and we are at this point 2 years away from the Russian famine, which I believe takes place between 1920 and 1922, 1923. I might be wrong on that, but that famine was just awful. It was a brutal period. It killed from starvation and disease about as many people as the Russian Civil War itself. in combat casualties. It killed... Oh, goodness. I'm actually going to need to look this up to get the correct number.
Tie prekliaté vléky sú úplne všade. Snáď nebude nikomu vadiť, keď ich zložíme.
Bude to vadit rudým. Ale hádám, že o to tady jde.
But if I remember correctly, at least 2 million people
Vaše rozkazy?
died from the Russian famine
Samozřejmě.
from the early 20s. So things like food and water,
Vidím
which-
nepřítele.
there are, fountains for in this area,
Čekám.
are just
Měním pozici.
not services that can be relied upon whatsoever. And I find
Jsem
the
připravena.
detail of
Už
the
jdu.
fountain having no water to be a nice touch,
Čekám.
shall we say.
Měním pozici.
So I have my
Dobře, jdu
two
tam.
medics who are separated from the rest of the group at the moment, and
Postarám se o to.
I'm maneuvering them to hopefully get a double pistol whip against the 2 sentries who are patrolling this part of the road.
Postarám se o to. Povídejte.
I also find the dirt and mud roads to be
Já se
a
o to postarám.
really nice detail for the art and map design of the game. Oh, this was good. Smack and smack. Yeah. Our battle sisters, they did
Jsem
well there.
připravena. Už jdu.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that even at this point, a fifth of the way into the 20th century,
Dobře, jdu tam.
Russia had pretty much just industrialized. Russia was a infant industrial power. They industrialized much later
Podívám se.
than several other nations on the continent, like France, England, Prussia, Austria, all industrialized either
Povídejte.
right before or well before Russia did.
Poslouchám.
So things that are common in, say, England at this time, like stone or cement roads,
Hledám kryt.
not really a thing in Russia, at least
Vidím
not yet,
nepřítele.
not in a wide scale.
Zaujímám pozici.
So as you can see, I'm making good use of my scout's stationary camouflage ability.
Vaše rozkazy? Měním pozici.
We're currently moving up on the station house and dungeon, or maybe open air gulag, where our Czech legionary comrades are.
Rozkazy?
I'm just trying to find a good, safe position for our medics.
Připravenější. Podívám se, co tam je. Vidím nepřítele.
Ano. Postarám se o to.
Zde. To je lepší možnost.
Ano. Vaše rozkazy? Som tu. Skryjem se.
Scream se.
Připraven, pane. Hned tam budu.
Что это было?
Yeah, so I was trying to
Poslouchám,
stealthily
pane.
move my men up against that low wall, but I've already attracted the attention of one of the guards.
Rozkazy?
So I'm quickly going to, at some point soon, open up with my scouts. I fortunately am able to get my legionnaires to the wall right
Rozkladám.
before this soldier makes us, which gives me just enough time to deploy our Shosho or Shosha machine gun.
Ano. Přede mnou se neschováš.
Poslouchám.
hochu. Mně se neschováš.
So now I'm trying to set up a sync
kámo.
kill with our
Rozkazy.
scouts and their critical shot ability.
Zaujímám pozici.
Pane, Poslouchám. Musím se někam schovat.
Vidím nepřítele.
Jsem tu.
Yes, we got at least one kill, and unfortunately, we ended
Vaše
up
rozkazy, pane.
overextending one of our scouts.
Připravenější už útočím.
So I get him behind hard cover as quickly as possible.
Ano, pane, provedu.
I also try to see if I can get a kill
Rozkazy, pane.
on
Hurá!
Poslouchám.
the soldier who's trying to make a
Ochutnej naši oheň!
break for the alarm. And unfortunately, we are just a second late.
Sem, postarám se o to!
Though that bayonet charge was very effective. It pretty much completely cleared out the
Ano?
central part of the station house.
Hledám kryt.
Oblast je čistá.
Připraven.
Přesně tak, pane.
Hledám jasná věc.
Nepřítel. Ano? To by šlo.
So now we're just gonna be looting whatever we can find.
Povídejte. Ano.
Už jsme se vzdali naděje. Děkujeme vám.
Vypadají napůl mrtví. Stavíme se pro ně později.
So despite the fact that we've opened the door, we are going to leave rescuing these legionaries until the end of the mission because, as Captain Longer mentioned,
Zaujímám pozici.
these men have not been well treated. They are
Poslouchám.
badly malnourished and are in no condition to fight.
Jdu do krytu. Čekám na rozkazy. Před!
Rozkazy, pane.
So I try to set up a double bayonet charge here, and if I remember correctly, it doesn't really go well. Yeah, it just doesn't really work.
Pane!
I've had such successes with the bayonet charges so far that I got greedy. The game struggles to differentiate and prioritize targets
Rozumím.
if you have multiple soldiers all doing a bayonet charge in the same area. So we need to keep that in
Hned
mind.
tam budu.
Poslouchám.
Hledám kryt.
So now that we've cleared the station house, I'm just moving my men to the other side into this road, which is actually paved. Or at least it's half paved. Pardon me.
Vaše rozkazy?
Pane?
Jsem na cestě. Idem na pozíciu.
Ano. Podívám se, co tam je. Postarám se o to, pane. Ano, podívám se. Nepřítel. Jakoby se
Podívám
stalo.
se,
Co tam je. Jakoby se stalo. Podívám se. Vidím nepřítele.
And so we're just getting vision on as many of these little squares as
Rozkazy,
we
pane.
can.
Podívám se. Nepřítel. Tak se podíváme, co tam je. Vaše rozkazy.
It's a precarious situation because all of these little houses with the fences, they offer cover for us, but that also means it's more likely that we just round the corner and come face to face with the enemy. So we need to scout out as many of these little courtyards and houses as we possibly
Vidím
can.
nepřítele. Jdu do krytu.
So I'm very gingerly moving up Alzbeta,
Připraven.
our second medic.
Hledám kryt.
Zde. Už jdu.
Rozkazy, pane.
The pistol, the 19... Oh goodness, what year was the Luger manufactured? I need to look that up. I'll probably have a little historical blurb at the end of the video about the Luger. But as the game calls it, the parabellum pistol, it actually allows us to become significantly more aggressive with our medics. And particularly with Magdalena, because Magdalena has the Dangerous Mind passive, which increases her damage scaling with intelligence. So that, combined with the massively increased damage of her parabellum, actually does make her a deadly combatant at close range.
Nebude to čekat.
Čekám na Ano, pane.
Připraven, musím se někam schovat.
Poslouchám.
So we successfully get the stealth kill on the soldier that is behind that wall of sandbags.
Jdeme!
And all in all, that was just flawless. We came up behind them, and they didn't even get off a shot. Saved us a ton of ammo, and it kept the heat off of us for just that much longer to get into a favorable position.
Rozumím. Měním pozici. Ano, rozumím. Rozumím. Pane? Podívám se. Vaše rozkazy. Overím pozici. Vaše rozkazy, pane?
Podívám se, co tam je. Postarám se o to, pane. Podívám se.
Nepřítel.
So the fairly simple and straightforward engagement in that little jail station house area where our comrades are imprisoned, that was a pretty decisive victory, because not only did we just physically eliminate the soldiers in that area, that also allowed us to outflank the majority of these little checkpoints. Because, as you can see, these checkpoints are facing inward to guard the exits of the city. They are not expecting enemies moving from the outside and outflanking their positions. So that has set us up for success for at least another 2 engagements after the one that we fought in the jail itself.
Podívám se, co tam je.
Povídejte, postarám se o to.
So I'm going to take these 2 riflemen and I'm going to attempt to flank them around. And then I'll have
Rozkazy? Rozumím.
multiple, essentially small groups of soldiers attempt
Ano,
an incursion into this road from multiple directions.
Ano. Rozumím. Poslouchám.
I'm just trying to bide my time and see if that one soldier in the middle will turn away, but it doesn't look like it. So I decide to move up my grenadier to see if he can get a spicy grenade chuck. And he does.
oblast je čistá. Rozumím.
Dobrá. Když jsou teď jejich hlídky a zásobovací linie narušené, můžeme plánovat útok na Rudou základnu. Domníváme se, že se usadili v katedrále. Zvrácenost. Rádi se takhle bílým vysmívají. Útočit na samotnou katedrálu nemá smysl, ale měli bychom zlikvidovat jejich posádku. Buďte opatrní. Určitě jich tam bude spousta. Jak jinak by dokázali
So
obsadit
now that we've
celé
eliminated
město?
the patrols and the checkpoints that are guarding the foot exits of the city,
Podívám se.
we are now
Ano.
in a position to assault their forward operating base in the cathedral.
Samozřejmě.
Podívám se, co tam je. Jako by se stalo.
I'm still going to consolidate and
Postarám se o to,
move
pane.
my way through the town methodically, taking on as many patrols as we spot.
Poslouchám, už jdu.
Jdu do krytu.
Just have another pair of sentries patrolling the road, and one of them thinks he sees something, so I try to get my men into cover as quickly as
Podívám
I
se,
can.
co tam je.
Poslouchám, pane, hledám kryt. Rozkazy, pane? Musím se někam schovat. Ano,
Podívám se.
vaše rozkresůvám se. Pane, jdu do krytu.
Ano?
Čekám na rozkazy. Rozumím. Nebude to
And it appears that he gives up, so I send someone forward in order to attempt a stealth kill.
Už jdu. Já se o to postarám.
And it looks like we will end up getting a sync kill, which
Pane,
I'm very happy about.
připraven. Hurá! Ano. Mně se
Though
neschováš,
it might end up
kámo.
being messed up. And once again, we see the power of the critical shot ability there,
Rozumím.
where it gets rid of one guy, and then even though it attracts the
Podívám se,
attention of
co
another
tam je.
soldier, at that point it's too late.
Připravenější už nebudu.
Postarám se o to, pane.
Podívám
se. Nepřítel.
We've gotten to the point of progression
Vaše
of our
rozkazy?
soldiers
Samozřejmě.
where
Poslouchám.
taking on pairs of enemies is extremely simple, and it's unlikely for us to even expend
Připravený, ano,
ammo.
pane. Som tu. Zaujímám pozici. Přidle rozkazu. Ano, pane. Poslouchám, pane.
Podívám se.
Připraven.
Tak se podíváme, co tam je.
Vidím
nepřítele.
Nepriateľ. Vaše rozkazy? Jdu do krytu. Poslouchám. Samozřejmě.
I'm just trying to maneuver my men around, just like we did before with that last checkpoint. Trying to get multiple different angles. And as you can see there, our scouts, their icons, they remain opaque, and then they have that sort of checkered green color after a couple of seconds. That confirms that they've been stationary long enough to remain hidden.
Ano, pane. Vaše rozkazy, pane.
So what I plan to do is I want to get my machine gunner
Připravený.
behind hard cover, and then deploy his machine gun so that he is firing right into
Tuto půjde.
that checkpoint, and that will hopefully bait
Jdu do krytu.
some of the soldiers
Vaše rozkazy.
into this little courtyard
Poslouchám.
into a killing zone, and then we can flank with the scouts. So I'm going to be taking them off silent mode very
Vaše
quickly here.
rozkazy, pane.
Or do I decide to do a sync critical shot, or do I take them off
Počúvam.
silent? No, I take them off silent first. And it's very effective.
Poslouchám, pane.
The controlled burst passive, which increases accuracy,
Přede
in
mnou se neschováš.
addition to the focused fire ability, which also increases accuracy, is just such a fantastic ability for evening the odds against multiple opponents.
Zde. Rozumím.
even though I would definitely claim that
Ano, pane.
the scout is the best overall combat role in the game, the machine gunner is definitely my favorite and the one that I have most fun using. Which makes sense because in
Musím se někam
what is it
schovat.
called? In Aliens Dark Descent, my favorite class was the gunner. Because
Podle rozkazu.
the gunner basically had an identical ability with the smart gun.
Připravený. Overím pozici. Počúvam. Ano.
Podívám se, co tam
Ano.
je.
I'm just trying to get a ton of scouting done with my
To vyšlo.
scouts.
Tak se podíváme.
Hence the name.
Vaše rozkazy.
And we don't really see anything, and
Pozriem
that's
sa.
the map edge, so there's really nothing there.
Presne
just
tak.
being overly
Overím
thorough.
pozíciu. Som tu. Ano.
I consider yeeting a grenade over to those 2 sentries that are by the tree, but I just decide
Ujímám
to
pozici.
use my rifleman instead because it expends less ammunition and resources.
Rozkazy, pane? Je synem smrti.
Jsem připravena. Ochutnej naši ocel!
And even though one of our men
Pozice
got
je zajímavá.
socked with
Už
a
jdu.
rifle butt there, it still ended up working out fine.
Ano.
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 Ano, pane. Dle rozkazu. Už jdu. Samozřejmě.
This occurred a while ago, but just so that I comment on it, one of our side objectives given to us by, I believe his name is Josef Levy,
Rozumím.
is to strip down some of the Red Army flags that are scattered throughout the map. Some of these flags end up being quite frustrating to find, and so it's not now, but later on I end up doing a cut in the video because I spend a couple of minutes just wandering around the map trying to find a couple of the last flags.
Už jdu.
Už jdu.
Dle rozkazu. Zaujímám pozici. Připravenější už nebudu.
We're just getting everyone that we can
Podívám se.
in position,
Jako by se stalo. Podívám se.
and we're going to
Postarám
move
se o
through
to,
this little
pane.
park that's near the cathedral.
Vidím nepřítele.
Because I do not have any interest whatsoever in entangling with
Poslouchám.
those 2 sandbag barriers with the machine gun pillbox. So I want to move around that as much as possible if I can.
Rozumím. Poslouchám. Rozumím. Som tu. Vaše rozkazy. Ano. Zaujímám pozíciu.
Vidím nepřítele.
Ano, pane.
Vaše rozkazy, pane? Ano, pane.
We're just slowly moving up,
Dle
trying to be as
rozkazu.
wary and observant as possible.
Poslouchám, pane.
Samozřejmě. Už jdu. Jdu do krytu.
I decided to move up against the stone wall so that I can rush up on the enemy pillbox and commandeer the machine gun. It's a risky move, but if we can get a hold of that machine gun, then it will work out very well for us. So I decide to critical shot the man that's near the machine gun.
Čekám.
And I prepare our medic, Magdalena, to
Postarám se o to.
make a dash for the pillbox.
Kdo to viděl? Připravený.
Ano. Přede mnou se neschováš, hochu. Poslouchám, pane, hledám kryt.
Ano.
Pane? Postarám se o to, pane!
Přítele!
And now I just have my men moving up, or my legionnaires moving up, so that we are in an L-shaped blockade, where I have a group over by the low stone wall, and then another group behind the other side of the low stone wall.
Připraven.
So now I
Musím se
have
někam
Magdalena
schovat.
opening up on the men in that square, but unfortunately there is another heavy machine gun which I did not see, and it is now firing indiscriminately at Magdalena. So I attempt to bayonet charge it, which in hindsight was a terrible idea. And it doesn't even seem to really work. I call the bayonet charge, and then Camila just seems to forget what to do. So I just try to move her behind, and it ends up working out, but just barely. Though my 5-man team on the western flank has successfully secured that side at the cathedral.
Postarám se o to.
Připravený. Skryjem se.
Čekám na rozkazy.
Co to bylo?
Jdeme!
Hej, ty, stop!
Nepřítel!
We're just at this point mopping up the stragglers.
Hledám kryt.
Povídejte. Zaměřuju.
Ano. Zaujímám pozici.
Poslouchám. Hledám kryt.
Jsem připravena. Postarám se o to.
Poslouchám, pane.
This one guy is surprisingly slippery. Yeah, it takes some time for me to lock him down.
Měním pozici. Tenhle je můj.
Vidím nepřítele.
Připravenější už nebudu.
Nemůžu se dočkat, až uvidíme, co v tom depu mají.
And then, if you could see, one of the sentries moved into the courtyard of the cathedral and realized that the point had been captured and that there were now 10 Czechoslovak Legionnaires all heavily entrenched waiting for him, and he was just like, nah, no thanks. And he just left. Just noped right out of that situation. Which, very sensible. I would have done so if I were in his shoes. So, at this point I've done a cut so that we get to the point where we find the last flag.
Podarilo sa nám vyčistiť mesto od toho červeného moru.
Místní by se díky tomu měli aspoň trochu cítit, že se jim vrátila svoboda.
Pravda. Ale nejspíš si ji nebudou užívat moc dlouho. Jdeme.
So right there, Captain Longer said Pravda. The name of the Soviet propaganda magazine through World War II, that was actually called Pravda. That was the name of the magazine. Or newspaper.
Vaše rozkazy, pane? Hledám kryt.
Počúvam. Hľadám kryt.
Čekám na rozkazy.
Just
Jdu
for the
do
sake of
krytu.
flavor, I end
Čekám.
up putting my soldiers in a perimeter around the cathedral
rozkazy?
before
Kryjem sa.
we leave. And there we go, victory! Your brave and resilient soldiers have successfully completed all main objectives. We found that the other Legion units had already moved on and the city had been taken over by the Reds. Nobody wanted to risk another Moscow, so we had to secure the city to clear the way for our train. We tried and succeeded. Flags are flying high. With the station now secure, your train reaches the position. For a moment, the city is quiet. Your advisor explains the situation. You are facing a decision. The track goes either south or north, and both lead to Vladivostok. Although we possess limited information, we now know several of our trains have taken the Southern Railroad that connects Penza, Shebrinsk, and Omsk. Not all of these trains have reported back to the provisional government. It might mean they've broken down or they've been ambushed. We take this route, we'll find out what happened to them. If we take the Northern Railroad, we'll go to... Oh goodness, I need to really concentrate on what that says. Yekaterinburg, and then to Omsk. There are White Army battalions stationed there. This could improve the chances of avoiding confrontation with the Reds. Also, if some of our legionaries took this route, they might be alive. There is a chance we'll find them. There's little difference between these options in terms of opportunities. Trading for food and fuel will be difficult no matter which way we go. We'll have to ration our supplies carefully. So, which will it be, Major? North or south? And it's at this point that I wish that these decisions were made after missions, because then I could have just ended the episode here and then asked my viewers which direction they wanted to go. But I don't want to risk having to restart the entire mission at this point. So I take a few seconds to think about it. And once again, as I do most of the time when faced with these decisions, I look at it from the perspective of the commander, of somebody who wants to get my men home safe, and I decide that the path with the lowest amount of risk is to go north. Because even though we could rescue more legionaries going south, we risk the men that we have thus far gained. And I decide that that's not worth it. And then, from a series perspective, for the sake of giving my viewers variety, we have yet to come into contact with any White Army forces. And that is a whole extra dimension of the war that we have yet to experience. So I decide to go north. And it is here that I realize I have made a terrible, terrible mistake. Because I could have upgraded the capacity of our cars, and I didn't. Which means that we are now at capacity, and the 4 soldiers that we have taken on are now... We can't take them unless we leave people behind. Because I was already at 18 out of 18 men when we started the mission, and I didn't check. Which was very silly of me, but rest assured we will not be making that mistake again. The first thing that I do after this point, which I can't remember whether or not I did it off camera, was upgrade the capacity of our infantry cars. So it ends up taking me quite a while to decide who to leave behind. So I'm going to do a cut where we will just skip all of that, and then we will return at the end chapter screen. And there you have it. That completes chapter 2 of Last Train Home. We successfully secured the train station and the Soviet, or should I say Bolshevik, forward operating base at the cathedral. We unfortunately needed to leave 4 soldiers behind due to my own stupidity, but that will 100% be rectified next episode. The very first thing that I do next episode is upgrade the capacity for our infantry cars so that we can take on more Legionnaires and rescue more Legionnaires. But until then, this has been the Evan Project for Last Train Home. This is part 6, and I look forward to seeing you all tune in for part 7, where we have taken the northern road, so we're going to follow the northern track on to Omsk, and we are hopefully going to rescue more Czechoslovak Legionnaires, and we are also hopefully going to make contact with the White Army, the other belligerent in the Russian Civil War. Now, whether or not they will be willing to help us, or if they will be just as hostile as the Red Army, has yet to be seen. So if you want to find out how that interaction goes, then please tune in for part 7. These videos have been released at a fairly steady pace, I'm happy to say, at least one part every, I think, 2 or 3 days. Hopefully we can bump that up to at least one every other day. But thank you so very much for tuning in, and I will see all of you next time. Farewell.